right. Paul, can you introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Paul Jones, lecturer in sports biomechanics and strength and conditioning at University of Salford. I've been involved in applied biomechanics, strength and conditioning for over 20 years. I've published over 100 peer-reviewed articles and 14 book chapters in areas of change reaction biomechanics, assessment and development of change reaction speed, and strength diagnostics. I've edited a couple of books, one on called Performance Assessment, Strength and Conditioning, and another one on called Multidirectional Speed in Sport, both by Routledge. And I'm a co-founder of a online platform called The Science of Multidirectional Speed, where we share information to coaches regarding multidirectional speed.
I love that website. I read some of your paper. I can't say all. It's a
That's
lot. But I enjoy your work, man. I enjoy your work.
cool.
So, what got you into researching a multi-directional movement or multi-directional speed?
It's quite a strange story, really, because when I was younger, I used to be a sprinter. Used to do a lot of track and field, to the point of being obsessed with trying to get faster. So that really got me into sports science. I have done work, applied work with in athletics. So the early part of my career, I was working with athletes, predominantly in Paralympic sports. So I worked with a lot of cerebral palsy sprinters as a biomechanist, and then sort of a few years into my sort of my I started working lecturing at Yale University, and a few years later, I decided to go. I want to go into do a PhD. I don't know what made me at that particular time what made me do a PhD, but I was interested in non-contact ACL injuries, anterior cruciate ligament injuries, particularly in women's football. So I'm talking around about 2006. I was kind of interested in identifying, a bit deluded at the time, but trying to identify factors you could assess to identify individuals who could be predisposed to ACL injury. I mean, kind of way out there. Think about it, how difficult it is to predict injuries now. But that path led me into focus on change reaction biomechanics, and so I started to do research on change reaction biomechanics. Um, Published a few of my articles for my PhD, and then I started to advise students on a similar thing. So Thomas DeSantis is one of them, Christopher Thomas is another. So the research sort of developed from there, really. So yeah, I've been for a long time been interested in developing speed, but it kind of took a different path as my career progressed.
Nice, nice. I don't know why. I kind of share the same path. I was into basketball at the first time, and then as my coaching career started, I was into track and field. And now after track and I was into multi-directional speed. This is interesting.
Yeah.
So, I know this is a big one, and this one's gonna be hard to answer. What are those elements that affect change of directions?
Um, in terms of the task demands of change direction, I think there's two key factors. I think we'll summarize into two key factors. One is obviously approach velocity, and the other is change direction angle. For the same approach velocity, so say we know velocity per second, increasing change direction angle will increase obviously the requirements of brake and therefore braking forces, and will also expand the ground contact time of that final foot contact when we're changing direction. Of course, that increase in ground reaction forces during that final plant step has implications for moving up the chain, particularly at the knee joint. That's where most of my interest lies in looking at the mechanics of the knee. And so effectively, if we increase change direction angle to about 90 degrees, you'll see an increase in knee joint lows, particularly the knee abduction moment. Beyond 90 degrees to up to about 180 degrees, the lows in the knee joint are pretty similar. So an increase from 0 to 90 degrees. Okay. Um, In terms of velocity, of course, increasing approach velocity increases ground reaction forces experienced, and therefore, of course, loading further up the chain. Um, but it's what's important to consider is with approach velocity, the faster you approach, the harder it is to achieve your desired intended direction change. An example I give is if you look at biomechanical studies where they report on intended direction of angle, say 45 degrees, 60 or 90, when the researchers look at the true cutting angle or true change direction angle, it's actually always much more shallower than the intended direction of directional change. And that's because they preset the approach velocity, it becomes more difficult to increase that change direction angle. So with that, effectively, you need to consider braking prior to that final foot contact. So we've done quite a lot of work around, particularly the penultimate foot contact, the step before the final foot contact. And we've also published some articles look at the steps prior to that. But if we focus on the penultimate foot contact, if we go to sharper directional changes, certainly beyond 60 degrees, we're required to reduce our momentum, reduce our velocity as we come to that final foot contact. To be able to handle the lows experienced in that final foot contact and be in an optimal position to facilitate that directional change. So we need to encourage braking in that prior step coming into that final foot contact. Shallow directional changes, 45 degrees or less, it's more about trying to maintain velocity. So we don't have much of a requirement for braking during particularly the penultimate foot contact during shallow directional changes. Between 45 and 60 degrees is probably a moderate amount of braking that's required. So effectively with 45 degrees or upwards, we're talking about sidestep cutting or pivoting if we're talking about 180-degree turns. When we go to shallow directional changes, we can perform obviously sidestep cuts or a crossover cut is a good maneuver to try and help maintain velocity during those shallow directional changes. Hopefully that answers your question.
Of course, of course, of course. So, when we look at sprinting, we're going to look at how the pelvis move. But why isn't there a lot of like people or coaches talk about how the pelvis move when it comes to like a change of direction?
No, that's a good point. It does tend to get ignored. There's pockets of research it does that look at hip movement and pelvic rotation. I think a couple of key studies I think about, well, general trends I see in the literature is if you think about the hip movement if I focus on sidestep cutting, that's probably the most common we look at. Obviously, in terms of hip movement, we want to encourage a neutral alignment when we make first contact in that final foot contact. So if we were more rotated, that's going to obviously increase, particularly that frontal plane knee joint load that we'd want to try and avoid. But if we're looking to change direction towards our intended direction of travel, we're going to involve more pelvic rotation towards that intended direction of travel. And of course, the more pre-planned that movement is, the more rotation you're going to get in the pelvis. And of course, you're going to have an abducted hip and you're going to externally rotate the hip. And of course, that puts great demand on those adductor muscles. There's research by Dupree et al. In 2021 that found, increased activation and lengthening of particularly adductor longus during during sidestep cutting. So there's a vulnerable muscle group there. And you see it in literature that, adductor strains, groin pain are common ailments of multi-directional change direction maneuvers. So in pre-planned situations, you get more pelvic rotation. You get slightly less pelvic rotation if it's unanticipated, because of course individuals will approach accordingly. They'll see a stimulus they have to react to, and then they negotiate the directional change. If it's more pre-planned, there's going to be more pelvic rotation. Another interesting finding in literature, work particularly by Jonathan Stainer over in Australia. When comparing unanticipated versus pre-planned change directions, what we found in pre-planned situations is you increase pelvic obliquity. So imagine tilting the pelvis laterally towards the intended direction of travel, and that allows the trunk to be more upright when changing direction. Of course, then if your trunk's more upright or leaning towards that intended direction of travel, it lowers around the knee joint, particularly that knee abduction moment. But when trials are unanticipated, you get less pelvic obliquity. So, of course, that then could lead to more lateral flexion of the trunk towards the plant leg side and therefore increase knee abduction moments. So there is a research out there around pelvic movement, but you're right, there's less looking at it. And it's that lumbar pelvic stability and control is actually vital for change direction and is underlooked or under research, certainly.
Man, I love it. I love it. And you also kind of like explain the long-term question I have for for months. I was like looking at how athlete move, like how basketball player move when like kind of like do a curve run or change direction. Every athlete move differently, and sometimes you saw like a pelvic drop when they change direction. And it seems like at that time it took them longer to like penultimate and then push off.
Yeah,
So it's yeah, fascinating.
cool. But it certainly is. It's certainly there. It's under research, but there's, I say, pockets of research out there that's looked at lumbar pelvic movement, and I think that's it's worthwhile an avenue for investigation moving forward.
Nice, nice. So besides lumbopelvic movement, when it comes like change of direction, is there other things you're gonna look at?
Um, I mean, I suppose in terms of change direction, I mean, I've talked already about sort of penultimate foot contact and prior braking because it allows you into that optimal position um, going into a change direction. So I think ensuring sort of adequate brake. If you're doing sharp directional change, ensuring adequate braking is important. Allows you in an optimal position. So if I think about 180-degree turns, um, you know, sort of lowering your center of mass, plenty of knee and hip flexion to absorb the ground reaction force and that penultimate step. Trunk sort of leaning back, planting the leg out front of the body. They're going to be key postures to help facilitate braking as you go from penultimate into final foot contact. And when we go into final foot contact, about making sure we have good frontal plane alignment of the ankle, knee, and hip. You don't want any rotations. We don't avoid knee valgus or knee abduction because that's going to increase lowers the knee joint. Um, more ankle rotation might make the ankle more vulnerable. So we've got to think about having good frontal plane alignment. Um, Obviously, with sidestep cutting, probably have a more lateral movement to help generate medial force towards that medial impulse towards that intended direction of travel. And I would try and encourage leaning the trunk towards the intended direction of travel because um, it will help lower loads during in the frontal plane around the knee joint, but also it should help with performance. So we're trying to increase that dynamic instability going into that reacceleration phase. So I think that's important to leaning towards that intended direction of travel. And therefore, the pelvis, the pelvic obliquity would be important there.
Nice, nice. So, uh, the other thing I want to ask is like when it comes to like change of direction, movement pattern, people's I used to learn like there's like crossover, shuffle, and now there's also like open step, what is it called? Crossover, shuffle, open, I forgot. So, oh, side steps or cutting.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there like only these four movement like patterns?
I mean, I suppose in terms of when we put an article over a couple of years back in Strength and Conditioning Journal looking at different agility maneuvers. I think the ones that we tend to sort of discuss a lot in the literature are obviously side step cutting is the most common. And you see a lot, one of my favorite sports is American football. And so side step cutting is a vital maneuver to evade opponents on the field in American football. So your side step cut as a good evasion maneuver. Can create lateral velocity to evade an opponent. Um, it does have the disadvantage of potential increased risk for the knee joint. It's an action associated with non-contact ACL injuries. So there's an element of risk to it. So we need to be conditioned to be able to perform those manoeuvres and have good technique to perform those manoeuvres. We mentioned about the crossover cut. The crossover cut's more about maintaining velocity. You don't get sharp directional changes with a crossover cut. It's more about maintaining velocity. But another move that's has some a little bit of research into it is the split step cut. So this is where you approach much slower, and at the point prior to decide on which direction you to travel into, you perform an amplitude jump, land momentarily in a sort of neutral position, and then rebound into a sharp directional change. So you might see that if you're looking to penetrate a defensive line, you may look to keep your opponent guessing. It's the very last second, then perform the split step cut, and then accelerate into that intended direction of travel. So it's more about an evasion maneuver rather than creating large amounts of approach velocity. It's a slower approach, but more of an evasive strategy. So they're the three that's commonly investigated in the literature. I mean, we've got research undertaken at the moment with in sports football, and I've got another PhD student exploring Gaelic football, and we've done quite a bit around um, notational analysis to look at different change direction maneuvers. So hopefully that research can identify more avenues for potential maneuvers. But there's certainly three common um, change direction maneuvers to help evade opponents, either through maintaining velocity or creating large separation from an opponent.
So it's sidestep, crossover, and then probably split stance, right?
The split, yeah,
Yeah, nice,
for
nice.
the three ones. You probably see them quite commonly in rugby league, rugby union, medical football. Those type of maneuvers quite common.
Nice. So, we all are interested in ACL injury mechanic. There's a lot of researcher talk about it. My boss is a great research on it. Shout out to Adam Petwee. Um, there's a lot of like research talk about like ACL injury biomechanic, but there's still a lot of like ACL injury going on. So why is that?
I mean, there's so many factors involved with injuries. I mean, it's so difficult to predict injury. I was talking about my story before where I had this delusional idea you can just try and predict injury. It's so difficult because there's so many factors responsible. I mean, you take sidestep cutting. It's a maneuver that's commonly performed by players. It could be an NFL player, it could be a basketball player, commonly performed. But why is it that suddenly, they perform this one maneuver, the ACL goes? So there's this. It's just so multifaceted. They could be fatigue, perturbation. If you factor in female athletes, where it's even more common, we've got factors like anatomical differences, the impact of the menstrual cycle. All these factors together combine to dictate an injury at a certain point in time. So it's very, very difficult to predict an ACL injury. All we can do as practitioners is just better prepare our athletes. Make them physically robust. You know, conditioning to be able to handle those experiences. That's one particular thing. Make him technically proficient. Make him be able to, teach them enough variety in their training. So teach them movement solutions. Different ways to perform maneuvers. So we're talking there about sidestep cutting and different cutting maneuvers. Make sure they're competent at crossover cutting both limbs, sidestep cutting both limbs, different approach velocities, different angles of direction change. Make sure they're competent at performing split step cutting maneuvers. Teach a repertoire of movement so that the athletes can find the solution on the field efficiently and effectively. So teaching good mechanics of well designed programs and making athletes more robust, targeting different areas to make sure they can handle those experiences during change direction maneuvers, deceleration maneuvers. That's all we can do as coaches and practitioners, because to predict injuries, there's just so many factors. I mean, take the Super Bowl the other day, the 49ers player who was on the sideline waiting, doing some little rebound jumps and then accelerates onto the field, ready to go. Achilles tendon ruptures. How can you predict that? I mean, that's incredible. Just that one moment, you know, it's just so difficult to predict any these catastrophic injuries like Achilles ruptures or ACL injuries.
Nice, nice. Man, that probably like it's bothering for the whole season, I guess.
What's that? Sorry.
I said that Achilles tendon injury, that's probably a thing that bothers him maybe the whole
Oh,
season, I guess.
that's a long time away. I mean, there's a bit of a problem. I think it's identified in, go on to X, it's called now, not Twitter. There's a bit of a fear around the commonality of Achilles tendon injuries in NFL players, which is, going to be interesting to see how that research progresses. Trying to understand why this a common occurrence. But you're right, these the ACL injuries, Achilles tendon injuries at the season and their career threatening. We need to try and do something to try and better prepare athletes if we can for try and prevent these happening. But I don't like to use the term prevent. I think mitigation is a better word because we can only really reduce relative risk. We can't really prevent injuries. It's so multifaceted.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So the next question is, um, coaches talk about like uh improving linear deceleration ability that can also transfer to like change of direction. Do you think like linear ch direction, if we train only linear, does that also transfer to like multi-directional deceleration?
Yeah, a lot of what we've done, we've encouraged doing deceleration drills because I think it's important to help. Uh, we've tried, we talked about before about penultimate foot contact and preparing for final foot contact. So I think it's important to help improve the deceleration ability. So we do a lot of with some of our studies and with some of the students I teach now. We do a lot of start stop drills. So we start maybe with 5 meters start and stop on a check mark, and obviously increase the distance of that to increase the velocity and make it more challenging. So trying to teach the good deceleration mechanics, get into lower the center of mass, get the foot out in front of the center of mass, facilitate braking more, knee and hip flexion, um, leaning back more. So trying to encourage good deceleration mechanics. I think it'll transfer to change direction. It also helps physically prepare. If you do some deceleration drills, you can develop uh, potentially eccentric strength for particularly the knee extents to help control um, the lows experienced during change direction maneuvers. So we do a lot of deceleration drills. Obviously, then transfer that to more open tasks where we get into response to opponents and do deceleration drills in that manner. Um, I think it's important to make it multi-directional, so lateral deceleration drills, and then I think it's important to incorporate all those. But certainly, we try and encourage good deceleration mechanics through doing deceleration drills. But again, it is an under a surprisingly under researched area. Deceleration. Obviously, most of the attention has been on change direction, but certainly we do try and encourage good deceleration mechanics. I think it does transfer to being able to decelerate prior to a change direction maneuver. I think it's important to teach good deceleration mechanics. So teaching them to decelerate to athletic position, ready position, or decelerate to a split stance, decelerate to with more rotation. I think incorporating those type of drills will have some good transfer to change direction maneuvers.
Nice, nice, nice. So, um, I know like in the book and also a lot of like practitioner gonna say if you have a good deceleration, if you have good maybe change of direction, it's better for like let's say team sport athlete. There's a better chance these athletes like can perform better, right? Instead of like just focus on linear speed, like acceleration. So when it comes to fatigue, do you think like deceleration and multi-directional change like change of direction, like these elements, like fatigue affects these elements first?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt fatigue will impact. In games will impact the movement quality. So, making sure your athletes are metabolic condition for the demands of the sport's going to be important to make sure we can maintain efficient technique, safe technique when we're decelerating or changing direction. So I think it is certainly important to factor that into that. We'll come back to that, talk about the injury scenario before. There's no doubt fatigue during games or moments in the game. So I think in football where you've done several repeated sprints in a short period of time, and then try and rapidly change direction, maybe that acute fatigue from that passage of play may lead to faulty mechanics. So I think it's certainly important to make sure, and we do say that in the we've got book chapter in that book on that, focus on developing metabolic conditions to help for players to better handle the demand metabolically in games to be able to make sure they fatigue has less an impact on mechanics during matches.
Nice, nice, nice. Man, that's like all the question I have for you today. So for those who are interested in what we're talking about today, or they're interested in those paper, those like great research and the great book, and also the platform, where can they reach out to?
Um, I tell you what I could do. I can give you my I'll do it by email if you want. I'll give you my Twitter handle so people can message me on Twitter if they want. Um, on the website we have Science of Multidirectional Speed website. You can post messages on there. We'll respond to any sort of questions you have. So you can easily respond to any questions you might have about all aspects multi-directional speed. So that's sort of two ways of contacting me. But yeah, I mean, you have my email, Eric. If you any of your viewers have any particular questions or want more information about some of the research, feel free to pass on my email and we can engage in conversation.
Nice, nice, nice.